So, how is the food? Good? Great. Well, we want to thank the amazing staff, culinary chef here at Regency Oaks. This is a five-star community here, so we are really blessed to be here, and we want to thank them for both a beautiful dining experience here and the wonderful food that they prepared for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our second part of our program here now. We're going to have an understanding of what Character GPS is all about. And of course, here again. All your questions. That's right. There we go. So this is a video that kind of explains the purpose of Character GPS. So if you go ahead and watch while you're eating.
Our young adults are surrounded by negative influences from the media and problems like bullying, disrespect, and lying. Character GPS can help our communities get back on track. Students are engaged in 8 weeks of interactive multimedia workshops that focus on real-life application of 16 character values. Lessons include practical exercises.
You see, we work on the heart of this child.
They help integrate these values into thoughts and actions. Let's all work together to steer our children and communities toward a better way.
So that's what it takes. It's teamwork, all working together to get the kids on a path to success in life before they get into trouble. So our mission statement from the very beginning is that we are passionate about helping kids and working with their families. And families are an important part. So our program has a parent component to draw the parents in to applying what the kids are learning in our classes at home as well. So again, it's a whole environment we're trying to create for our kids. So with this passion that we have, it just keeps building, and having all of you here is so encouraging to us that you all care about our kids, because the kids are our future. So we know that when kids don't get their needs met, we see symptoms of that. And these symptoms are very common ones that we've talked with school administrators and coaches and churches and all organizations working with our youth, that when they're struggling, you see things like bullying and cheating, stealing, fights, apathy to learning, disrespect of authority, right? And disrespecting each other, addictions, lying, and of course, it really all boils down to low self-esteem. So our program is very much focused on building the confidence and self-esteem of our kids that often gets torn down in our culture. So we actually do an assessment at every place that we do our Character GPS. We kind of customize the program to what are the greatest needs that population of students are struggling with, so that we can help them have the greatest impact. So we do this before, and then we do this at the end of our program to see what gains have been made. And of course, that assessment there, we were at the Pasco Juvenile Detention Center for a year, really trying to help kids who understood that they made mistakes getting a second chance and getting on track. So we like to provide to you kind of a perspective of what's going on with our kids. And from our very first event, we had the Tampa Police represented by our friend Kurt Royka, and this is the table that he sat at with his team, and he kind of helped provide us, again, what are they seeing, what's going on with their kids. So I'm going to invite our friend Kurt Royka to come up, and he's kind of our Rocky champion, to share with you a little bit about the police perspective. Big hand for Kurt.
Let's say I've never been introduced to Rocky theme songs, so that's a new one. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here again this morning or this afternoon now at the GPS annual luncheon. To Jeff and Debbie, thank you so much for the invitation to be able to come and speak about our youth. The children of our society are probably the most valuable asset that we have, right? They represent our future. They represent our future leaders, our teachers, our doctors, our lawyers, and even, yes, our policemen. I'm thankful for organizations such as GPS that invest in the future of our children. When Jeff initially invited me to speak today, I asked him what he'd like me to address, and he touched on two topics. He touched on one with mental health and how it's affecting our youth and how it plays into crime, and then also just about crime in general. And while these two topics are mutually exclusive in one sense, at times the antidote is the same. So I'm going to address these very briefly in the time that we have together this morning. I think we'd all agree that we live in very challenging times. In many cases, what seems right is wrong, and what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong. And my goal here today is not to be political at all, but we have to take an honest look at what's happened around our country and how it's impacted our children. Almost 3 years ago, we had this thing called a pandemic, right? And we would say that we faced some very challenging times, and during that pandemic, we faced some challenges that we might not have ever faced before. For the first time in our nation's history, we actually had a lockdown, where kids didn't go to school, parents didn't go to work, nobody left the house. And that had a profound impact on our children. While the intentions were well intended, and they were good to some degree, the impact, again, was profound on how it affected our children. Prior to the pandemic, we were already starting to see the rise of juvenile mental health diagnosis. We were already beginning to see it. However, the restrictions from the pandemic, what that did is that kind of just exacerbated the problems that we're seeing related to youth mental health. For teenagers, restrictions meant more months of virtual learning, more time isolated from friends, and cancellation of important social events like sports and school performances, graduations, and proms. And I'll tell you that the whole interaction of youth and being in community is so important to the development. And what we've learned is from this pandemic and from what happened during that time is that because of the lockdowns, it's led to low self-esteem. And I apologize. And with low self-esteem, what comes with that is depression. And so we're seeing a higher number of cases of depression being diagnosed from kids as a result of what we faced in it. And the reason why it's so important to us with programs like this is, once again, low self-esteem equals also what? Low self-worth. So we see that with our kids. And then on the crime front, we continue to see a decrease in the number of youth being arrested, which is terrific. Last year we really had 2,000 kids. I say 2,000. We have a county of school population over 220,000. We only had 2,000 kids arrested in Hillsborough County. That's a tremendous reduction in number of youth. But the sad part of that is that we're seeing kids get deeper into the system on the front end. And they're starting at younger ages, such as 12. They're jumping in headfirst into the deep end of the pool, and it's not a good situation for them or for our community. DJJ defines our serious offenders as any youth that has a history of felony arrest, and they categorize them into three sections: serious, violent, and chronic. And so we're seeing more serious, chronic, and violent offenders come in at a younger age. So these are the kids who are breaking into houses, they're breaking into cars, they're robbing people at gunpoint. They're going to school and they're robbing their friends at school. We see this all the time. And these are the problems that you don't hear about on the news, but we see them and they're very real in what we have to deal with. These youth that are committing these crimes, these SVC youth, consistently exhibit a high level of antisocial personality characteristics and high levels of substance abuse and, family dysfunction, and belong to a delinquent peer group and have a general lack of desire to conform. Go figure, right? But there is a common denominator with this group also. It is called low self-esteem or low self-worth. They have a broken moral compass. They have not learned that they have an intrinsic worth and that there's something more than life and a life of crime. They do not know that they were created to live peaceably with all men. This is where programs like Character GPS comes into play. GPS teaches that character development. They teach youth that their life can have meaning and that they can play an invaluable part in our society. They teach our youth that it's impossible to love and to care about others if you do not love and care about yourself. Whether we're addressing mental health or crime, our children need to know that they are loved and that they have an intrinsic value and they're valuable to our society. So it's hard to give you a full picture in 5 minutes or less, but hopefully you see that we are dealing with a lot of serious crime out there. The low-level stuff is kind of put on the back burner. The deep-end stuff is what's really out there today, and these kids need some help. They gotta have moral guidance. They have to have a moral compass that works. Otherwise, they're not gonna make it in society. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. You know, we, again, often don't realize what our police are going through and trying to help keep our communities and our kids safe. So we always try to get the word out of what Character GPS is doing. We were on Bloom with Gail Guayardo sharing again about mental health concerns and again what we're trying to do with Character GPS to help kids in that. So we've been pretty busy here. And now we're going to hear from Ellen Snelling. And this is the theme from Greatest American Hero. So, how about a hand for Ellen? Again, she's the Anti-Drug Alliance, and she is a lightning hero. So thank you so much, Ellen. You can use this microphone, or you can use
Like a walk around. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Jeff. Thanks for inviting me today. How long have we had the music on? So I'm Ellen Snelling with the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance. A magic trick. Okay. Okay, so now you can hear me. I'm Ellen Snelling with the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance. Very happy to be here today. And I'm going to tell you everything you need to know in 5 minutes. So first we're going to talk about children's mental health and substance use, which is our topic for the day. And Captain Royka, thank you so much, because I'm going to show you 3 questions that I wanted to get through in 5 minutes, but you covered one of them already, so thank you very much. So the first one was, how did the pandemic affect children's mental health and well-being? So we already heard about it. Great presentation. The second one is, there a connection between mental health and substance use among youth? And this is my primary concern because we do try to prevent substance use among our youth. And the last one is, how can we help children become more resilient, give them the tools that they need to cope with stress, anxiety, and depression, which we know everybody's facing right now, especially our kids. So there have been several medical groups that have called a national emergency in children's mental health. And there's a quote from a doctor at All Children's Hospital that I thought was good to show what she is seeing there at All Children's. As we continue through the pandemic, we continue to see the toll taken on our kids in terms of increased stress and anxiety, increased substance abuse, eating disorders, and suicide. So this is what they're seeing on the front lines. So I'm going to give you a little data, because I'm a data person. And this is the 2022 Florida Youth Substance Abuse Survey of middle school and high school students. So it's hot off the press. And we're going to go through 3 slides that show some of the correlation between mental health and substance use. And you'll see it's pretty dramatic, especially the last slide that I'm going to show you. The first one addresses the COVID-19 pandemic. The children were asked 2 questions on this part, and one of them was, is there an adult in your home that lost their job or had their hours cut? And you can see the difference in alcohol use. This chart shows you alcohol use among youth. And it was only 12.3 in the children that said no, they didn't have job loss in their home, but it was 16.5%. So there's a higher drinking rate among kids when they have an event like this at home. The second one is about their emotional health. And the ones that said that it's a lot better or a little better are much different than the ones that said a little worse or a lot worse. And you can see 22.2% of the children that said their mental health was much worse were drinking alcohol. And this is depression. And Captain Royka mentioned this. So we have depression and substance use. And if you have 0 symptoms, you can see how low the either alcohol, marijuana, or other drug use is. But when you get up to 4 symptoms, look how it skyrockets. So again, the more mental health and emotional issues that a child has, the more likely they are to use drugs and have other dangerous effects on their life. And the last slide for the substance use and mental health is showing suicide attempt. These are children that either said they did or did not have a suicide attempt. And you can see dramatic changes in the drug use in these children with alcohol marijuana and any other drug. And it's either, it goes up to 5 times as much use if they tried to commit suicide. Okay, I can't give our presentation without talking about this. So I'm just gonna quickly go over the latest drug trend that I want everyone to know about. And it's called Delta 8. So Delta 8 is made from hemp, believe it or not, and it's sold in convenience stores and smoke shops near you. And I really want parents and grandparents and everyone to know about this so that you'll be on the same page as your children and your grandchildren. And the main point here is if you look at this, here's regular Skittles, which is the child's candy, and here's medicated 250 milligrams THC Skittles. Look how close they look. Like any child could mistake this and end up in the emergency room. And here's some more that I bought in a convenience store near me in Temple Terrace. And I do have a bag up here with all these candies. If you're interested, I won't pass it around right now because I don't want you to mistake it for dessert. But if you'd like to see it and take pictures, because it's really nice to have on your cell phone and you can share with other parents. But this is the drug trend that I really want to make sure everyone knows about and keep this out of the hands of our children. And also, I'm working on policies to try to ban this in the state of Florida. And the last couple slides are just about one of our youth groups that we have called YMAD, Youth Making a Difference. And this is our East Bay High School YMAD group at the Veterans Day Parade. These youth are there's almost 150 at East Bay High School. It's one of our biggest clubs. And we try to give them all the different types of experiences and trainings that will lead them to lead a really successful life. We even brought 2 of our students to Tallahassee last year for our Advocacy Day, and they were able to talk to House representatives and senators. So we try to give them a very well-rounded experience, and then in turn, they serve as a mentor for others. And that's all I have. Did I do it under 5 minutes?
You did.
Okay, thank you.
So you can see the challenges are becoming more and more difficult to even distinguish between what's candy and what's, maybe not healthy. We have a problem with our kids because, again, of the communication they get in social media. They hear about medical marijuana. So they say, oh, medical must be healthy. And actually, marijuana is not healthy for healthy kids, right? It's for people medical marijuana is for people that are in excruciating pain and often, being medicated for pain management. So we've also been busy, again, getting in the community, and we were talking with our dear friend John Morris at Joy FM, sorry about that, John. John wanted to be here, but they're doing their fundraiser this week as well. So we've been checking in with John periodically to keep the Spirit FM community aware of, again, what we're doing to help kids and trying to, again, make sure that we communicate to parents how important it is for them to be working with their kids from all ages. You think you get your kids off to a good start, but at any age, they're susceptible to the challenges in our culture. So to hear more about the difficult challenges, we have our dear friend Dottie. And Dottie was here several years ago to give us an update on how things were going with, unfortunately, that Florida is ranked third in human trafficking. And she's going to give us an update on how that is. Thank you so much, Dottie.
Uh-oh, did I turn off the whole thing? My colleague Kate and my husband know how technically challenged I am. So, Jeff, would you turn off the music? I'm afraid I'm going to do it again. All right.
Dottie was a cheerleader, so we put the NFL music on.
Many moons ago. Go Dolphins. Dottie Gruber with the Heart Dance Foundation and the anti-trafficking director for the No More Foundation. I've been in the anti-trafficking field for over 40 years, seen a lot. What we do at the No More Foundation is we go out and educate the community, churches, businesses, whoever wants to hear about human trafficking in ways that people can get involved to help end this horrendous crime in our society. So, next slide. 5 minutes is hardly even, you can hardly scratch the surface, but I'm going to do my best. This is a slide that shows that our human trafficking issue continues to grow. And human trafficking, what does that mean? My simplified version and definition of human trafficking is the business of the exploitation of vulnerabilities for another person's gain. And that's what both of the speakers previously have talked about, the vulnerabilities that our kids have, and that's what Character GPS helps our kids, because we all have vulnerabilities. Some of us have deeper vulnerabilities than others, and our kids are really suffering, and our kids are that target. Florida is third in the nation for human trafficking, and the Tampa Bay area is one of the top destination spots for a trafficker to lure and groom our children. 2 million children are groomed or trafficked globally. 17,000 kids a year in the United States. 1 in 4 victims of human trafficking are children. 1 in 3 children are solicited for sex within 48 hours of running away from home. A trafficker can size up a kid in no time and determine what those vulnerabilities are, and then zero in on those vulnerabilities to gain a false sense of trust. So it's human trafficking typically is not a snatching or a kidnapping off the street. It's building a relationship and grooming a child over time. The average age of a trafficked child is 12 years old. So we have what we call a pipeline process. First, there's a recruiting stage, a grooming stage, a trafficking or entrapment stage, and then a black market phase. The recruiting phase is, maybe a vulnerable young girl is at a mall and this Romeo pimp is in the mall and can kind of look at her and size up a vulnerability, figure out a way to meet her, and start building a relationship. So the victim's vulnerabilities are assessed and then exploited. Then comes a grooming phase where they continue to build that trust relationship with someone and gain their trust. And many times that means maybe the perpetrator, trafficker, pimp, I'm using those 3 terms interchangeably, will buy expensive shoes, jewelry, purses for this person. And boys and girls can both be trafficked, men and women. But anyway, that's part of the grooming phase. Then comes the trafficking phase, when they've really gained that trust, and if you love me, then you'll go do this for me, and they'll send them out to prostitute. The victim is actively exploited by the trafficker by means of force, fraud, or coercion. And in a court of law, if it's an adult, you have to prove force, fraud, or coercion to win a case, but a child, anyone under the age of 18, is an automatic human trafficking case. You don't have to prove force, fraud, and coercion if that child was commercially, sexually exploited. And then the black market phase, where they're inactive, being bought and sold. So I'm trying to speed this up, Jeff. How am I doing? What's interesting, and this has already been alluded to by our speakers, in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, the internet became the top recruitment location for all forms of trafficking. Online recruitment for sex trafficking went up 22% in use since 2019. Recruitment using Facebook went up 125%. Recruitment using Instagram went up 95% compared to 2019 data. So I just say all this to say, traffickers, pimps, perpetrators are out there looking at our kids, sizing up their vulnerabilities, and then finding a way to build relationship for their own personal gain. But we can help keep our children safe. All these prevention steps, I'm not going to read every one, but making a human trafficking talk with your kids mandatory, just like we would a drug talk or a sex talk, very important. I'm not going to read them all, but really develop this 2-way confidence and conduit with your child. So you know what they're doing, they know what you're doing, and that you just want to keep them safe. So I think there's one more slide. We can all make a difference, and one of the ways is what we're doing now, education and awareness. Consider holding an event. Kate and I will help you with that. Start a community group or a school club group, and advance policymakers. We're doing a lot of that, but be a conscientious and informed consumer. So thank you, Character GPS, what you and Debbie do, Jeff, to instill the I am valuable in our children so they don't fall prey.
Priceless, right?
Priceless. That's right.
I'm going to hand her down. Great. And you can see our speakers, any one of these topics, they could be going on and on about the challenges facing our kids. We're just trying to kind of paint the picture that often we're not hearing in the news of what is going on and the trends that we're facing. Unfortunately, they're not getting better, it's getting worse. So often when we see a child, you can look at them and they say, oh, they seem fine, right? But you often see kids that are having behavior problems, and so the immediate reaction often in our schools is, what's wrong with this child? And so, again, kids act out when their needs are not being met. And so our schools often are not trained and prepared, although we have some of our really progressive school leaders here with us here today, like Dr. Bretta Wilson that we've been partnering with for over 7 years. But many don't really understand, they're focused on what they're measured on, academics. And yet the child is a whole child approach. So we need to really understand that their needs goes beyond just academics. And if we don't look at what's going on, we don't really understand what is happening with that child. So the better question, instead of saying what's wrong, is to say what has happened to this child? What trauma have they experienced? And trauma can be in many different forms, and the duration and the depth of that trauma, if they continue to be traumatized again, this inhibits the development of our kids. And of course, COVID-19, this last, pandemic, was just another trauma on top of the trauma that our kids are faced. So trauma, if we look at the definition again, has to do with not only abuse, physical, emotional, but neglect, domestic violence that they may be involved with at home, and witnessing, seeing things that are happening to them. All these things add to the trauma experience of our kids that often we don't know just by looking at that child. So our trauma-informed care program, as defined by Department of Juvenile Justice, we've designed our program to really understand and help kids. We don't try to judge them on where they've been. We try to look at their needs and say, how can we help you move forward with your life? Because that's the way for kids to heal. They need to understand that this interruption in their development is not their fault. This has happened to them. They are, in a sense, victims, but we want them to not focus on being a victim, but being on a victor. Empowering them, giving them tools and training them so that they can start to get the help that they need that parents may not be fully aware of or teachers may not be trained to help them specifically. So we teach the kids how their brains learn. So not only from a learning perspective, because when kids do academically better, we know it builds their confidence and self-esteem, but we also help them understand that trauma, again, impacts how they make decisions. So again, their primitive brain is the fight or flight, the animal in us. And when you're traumatized, kids are often fall into that fight or flight mode. And that primitive brain often then leads to reactive behaviors that are often not good decisions. So we try to help kids to understand that they want to be making decisions from their frontal lobe. That's the decision-making abilities that God's given all of us. But often our kids don't use them, and they don't realize that until they're 25, they're not fully developed. So we encourage them, you need to be coachable. Find adults, parents, coaches, mentors, teachers, principals, who can all help you because they have not only a fully developed frontal lobe, but they have life experience. So these are the things we try to help coach kids to, is don't try to hide, don't try to figure it out on your own. You need to get help. Feel free to ask for help. There's many that want to help. But kids fall into this weather vane thinking. That's that primitive brain. The weather vane, we ask, where does the weather vane point? And the kids will say, wherever the wind's blowing, right? Well, that's often what their emotions. I don't feel like going to school. I don't feel like doing my chores. I don't feel like doing homework. They go by their feelings, and we know that that is one of the worst decisions to make when you're just making emotional decisions. So we want them instead to focus on the compass. And so we use the compass as a metaphor and a symbol for our kids, because it always points where? North, right? It's consistent. It helps them to know and get their bearings so that they understand what they're facing and where they're going in life. But again, if you're a weather vane person, you often follow along with social media. And of course, we know that's the blind leading the blind. Kids that don't know are spreading things that they don't know, and it gets passed on. So we want them to learn principles of truth that are based on core values of success. So kids often have a technology paradigm. They think the latest, greatest technology, is the best. But actually, it's the technology that gets outdated. Wisdom is eternal. We want the kids to focus on building wisdom and building the internal compass so they know how to make good decisions in their life. But if they're a weather vane, they then are sad. They focus on who? Themselves, right? Do they always get what you want when you want it? No, that's not the way the world is, right? So they have adversity and they get disappointed. And we tell the kids, I've been to Haiti, I've been to Philippines, all around the world, and we have the most disappointed people here in the United States, even though we're the wealthiest country in the world with the greatest opportunities. So unfortunately, kids that fall into the weather vane thinking end up wandering, looking for love in all the wrong places. That Dottie often will tell you with the trafficking. But whatever it is, they're looking for things that are not going to be wise. But if they follow a GPS approach, right, they can then seek wisdom. They can make good proactive choices. And we tell the kids, a lot of the things in your life is not just bad luck or good luck. It's good luck created by good choices. Being with the right people at the right time, doing the right things, instead of with the wrong kids, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, then you're going to end up with Lieutenant Kurt Royko or Matt Komet, that they're going to have to help you get back on track because you're not making good choices. So what often happens is that kids get then programmed into either they're told this or they experience this. They begin to believe things that are not true. They believe they're not worth anything. They're worthless. But we know that they were made priceless, and nothing can change that. They often think, I'm broken. But no, we say, no, you are capable. So this reprogramming helps the kids to start to realize that they can see themselves differently. They say, I can't be responsible, right? So don't blame me, I'm just an irresponsible person, right? So my parents and teachers tell me, right? But we know that they can make good choices. They can be responsible in their lives. Sometimes they don't think they're smart. They're comparing themselves to others. But we know that they can learn how to learn. And that's what we do in our GPS programs. And again, often they compare themselves. They say, I'm not as talented as someone else. But we actually have them do a mini Myers-Briggs, and they learn that everyone has talents. You just have to discover what your talents are and then build on those. And then some kids say, I don't fit in. And kids want to fit in, but we tell them actually, being trained as leaders, you don't try to fit in, you try to head in the right direction, and people will start following you. That's the real key to freedom in their lives. So you might feel all alone. Well, guess what? You have family, build teams, build people that care about you. As many, I can see in our wonderful audience here today, is that there are people that really care about kids. And we all have that heart. They just have to realize that they need to connect with them and be coachable. So again, if they don't have to figure things out themselves, that's a tough way to live. You can be coachable and get help and advice, work in teams, so you don't have to figure it all on your own. So we'd like to have our first award. Anuv, can you come on up here, please? Anuv. It's helping kids to make changes in their lives. And Anuv actually took our program in 5th grade at Berkeley Prep. And Anuv, I think you realize that you're a very lucky person, right? You've got loving parents, you've been given great opportunity, and you're going to a great school, right? So when we invited you to come speak to some of our foster homes, I think you saw the opportunity that, you can see life through some other kids' eyes and give them the encouragement that they can get on track, that they can be, able to be all that they want to be. And as you just kind of observed kids in the foster homes, what did you kind of notice as you tried to give them that encouragement?
I noticed that they were a bit hesitant to receive advice at times, but they still, tried their best, no matter the situation, to pay attention as best as they could in their situation. So, it was helpful to know that, we were there trying to help them, and, some of them were trying their best to get the help.
Right. So Anu could have just said, hey, I'm one of the lucky ones, life is good for me, but he's decided to really take a leadership role and start to work with kids that don't have all the things that he has, and yet they're made priceless and they can be encouraged to be all that they were made to be. So we'd like to give Anu the GPS Workshop Mentor of the Year for our foster home. How about a hand for Anu? So again, as our kids go through our program and learn to be leaders, that we give them then leadership opportunities. And as they step up and realize how they can make a difference in other people's lives, it continues to grow and develop their own leadership. So here's just a quick clip back when we got our first grant. Can you hear that well enough?
GPS program at Stuart Magnet. So here's what that's all about. These kids are the ones Jeffrey Kane, co-founder of the program, is trying to reward for getting better grades, improving in behavior, and just being better students altogether. And get this, the nonprofit just received a $40,000 grant from the Department of Juvenile Justice.
Our future is our kids, and we want to help get our kids on track. We live in a toxic culture. There's so many temptations and distractions for kids. We want to give them tools that can help them be successful in life.
And speaking of, Character GPS is going to take that $40,000 and use it for programs to rehabilitate young people in the juvenile justice system right now, specifically in Pasco County.
So that's just a little clip, and that was Stuart Middle Magnet, again, our friend Dr. Wilson. So early on, we were trying to reach kids, and those were kids that were basically heading out the door, and they were given one more chance to get their academics and their lives back on track. So since 2016, we've actually been winning now awards with the state through the Department of Juvenile Justice. And these awards have allowed us then to, again, reach and provide the program for free to often our schools and churches, as well as obviously our donations from all of you that make it possible. So it's amazing how God has blessed us, but every single year we've been winning the grants because we measure, we show the impact, we show how the kids are advancing, and of course the state loves to invest in something that's working, right? A lot of our money goes to all sorts of things, and it's nice. Our program's not just entertainment. And so then they asked us to create a guns and gang awareness component. As you know, the school shootings you hear in the news, it's just awful what kids are, again, traumatized and fearful of in their safety, even in their own schools. So we created this component, and again, our Department of Justice providers have just really loved what our program is all about, so they keep asking us to do more. So we continue to win grants from them that allows us, again, to reach some more kids. But the real meaning to Debbie and I and our whole GPS team is that we're realizing that what we're doing is working and making a difference. And during the pandemic, many programs were shut down across the state for our youth when kids needed actually coaching and mentoring more than ever. And so out of the blue, we got this in the mail, the Department of Juvenile Justice Community Heartbeat Award, because we didn't shut down our programs during COVID. We took all the precautions to make it safe and everything, but we made sure that the kids had coaches and mentors and training because they needed it more than ever. So sometimes you kind of do the right thing and you get, God says, okay, you're doing pretty good there. So we been invited now for the second time to the statewide Restoring Hope Conference in Orlando. And this topic they asked us to speak about our guns and gang awareness components. So I'm going to give you just a quick taste. It's obviously a full program. My beautiful wife there, Debbie, and I, we love working as a team, and the kids often love to see a married couple. They want to see, they ask questions like, do you guys ever fight? Do you ever get on? They have all these questions, so we share with them how it's real. And one of the things that's real is that we're designed to attach. The question is, what do we attach to? In Dottie's world, they attach to often the wrong things. They trust the wrong people. But whatever you decide to attach will determine the trajectory and the success in your life. So if you prepare and then you're ready to do great things, whether you prepare for a test and ace the test, or you prepare for a team sport and you win the game, whatever it is, the preparation leading to good things in your life will produce fruit. Unfortunately, if they don't connect to a vision, if kids are just trying to survive, again, because they're traumatized, they often attach to the wrong things, which is escapism. And why is escapism attractive to kids? Because it's fun, right? But we try to tell the kids, don't escape from your life. Make your life so wonderful you don't have to escape from it. And that is a real theme that we try to present to our kids to make their lives real. But this is what happens. We try to share with the kids the process. Why are these school shootings happening? So we give them some data of different school shootings that have been in the news and some that we don't hear about. But there's a pattern to these people that become very broken. They lose track of reality. They've escaped into fantasy world, and then they do some terrible things. And so even here in Florida on Valentine's Day, again, we experienced it here. So we got in touch with some data to help kids realize what's going on. So they did a 10-year study from 2009 to 2019, how many school shootings in these countries, 2 in Canada, 2 in France, 1 in Germany, 0 in Japan, 0 in Italy, 0 in the UK, and we guess how many do you think was in the United States? And then kids go, oh, 25, or 50. They may up it, maybe 100, but actually 288. And so the kids are they know they've heard of this stuff, they just don't realize it's at this kind of magnitude and how many schools and students this impacts, and it could be your school next. So then we say, well, maybe in the United States we just had 10 bad years. It was just, it's a bad year, bad trend. Then we show them the trend line, you can see the blue is the United States. And so it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So we try to engage the kids. Again, you're not a victim, you are a victor, you're a leader. What can we do about this problem? So the pattern is that kids that are heavily bullied are at risk of deep-seated anger. And when kids are angry, they want to escape from the lives that they don't enjoy, right? And so they start desensitizing, practicing, often with violent video games, and often it's more men, male that are attracted to it rather than the girls. And so they get into deeper depression and anger isolation where they see guns as a source of power. And then they start acting out the fantasies of the revenge on the people that have bullied them. And so this slippery slope that kids are on is something that we can do something about. So the first thing is we've got to stop the bullying, the damage, the trauma that's done. I'm sure we all had some bullies in our lives, and maybe there's bullies in the adult world that we have to deal with as well. So we need to stop that damage. Instead, be a friend. See someone sitting alone at lunch? Go sit with them. So we encourage our kids to develop their leadership, not thinking about themselves, but being heroic to reach out to other kids. But if you see someone who's starting to fall in this pattern of fantasizing, talking about, guns and so on, report it, right? You're not tattling on them, you're getting them the help they need before they go down this slippery spiral. And again, if they start bragging about it, that's like the next stage. They start playing out. When no one says anything, then they think, oh, it's just fine. I'm just testing out and everyone seems to think it's cool or something because no one's pushing back. And so then if they see a threat, school shooting, the DJJ has a no-joke program. And so as Pat knows, Pat McGee, our partner in prevention, it's important that we realize it's not joking. Kids that are talking about this, it's because things are going on and they're playing out fantasies. So instead, we want to encourage kids to join teams, not gangs. Teams are constructive. They build self-esteem. They build talents. Gangs are a destructive force, and we go into all that in the training as well. So again, we encourage our kids to be heroic. And as you saw, New's heroic. We have another one of our students here today who's going to share a little bit about his work as being heroic. So in our program, we're an anti-bullying program. Every single one of our 7 toolkits has components to address bullying because it's a major problem. And so we try to help kids align to that you need to have the right values. You need to be aligned to the things that are important, and then you need to put them into practice. So the value practice then builds your leadership and builds your ability to handle these challenges in life. So we use the metaphor of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is what we all see. And kids often want to look good, but it's who you are in the inside that is priceless, that makes a difference. So we encourage the kids to, again, embrace these values, build them into your character by practicing them for 30 days so they become your habit. So instead of trying to fake it, you're just being who you are. And people will be attracted. We tell them, people will hire you for jobs, they'll want you on your teams when you demonstrate good character that you can be trusted. So we always then talk with our kids about, here's today. And we ask them, can you change your past? And we all say, what? No, you can't change the past, although some kids get stuck with that trauma. But what you can change is your future, right? We want kids to focus on the future, to motivate themselves, to have goals, to think positive, things can be better in their lives. So what's the shortest distance from today to your great future? A straight line, right? Wouldn't it be great if all of our kids were just on the straight line to their future? But as we tell kids, you can't hit a target you don't have. So if you don't have goals for your future, how can you hit it? So instead, they end up getting distracted. And sometimes they're not able to reach their potential because of all the things that were shared by our great speakers here today. So we try to help the kids to realize it's that straight line that you want to build in your life, motivate yourself, and get focused on it. So our 7 toolkits are skill building. It's not topical like many other character programs. We build the skills, one is required for the next, to build all the way up to the highest levels of healthy relationships, which build healthy teamwork. And our friend R.V. Brown is a big team guy. He does a lot of workshops with his wife Frances about building teamwork with kids, because that's where the real success in their life is going to be. So how do you create this straight line? Well, basically, we help the kids think, if you are on one side of a river and on the other side is your future, but there's a strong current, like in our culture, you try to swim across, what's going to happen? The current will wash you away. But if you had stepping stones to rise above the current in our culture, you could stay focused to get to the amazing future that God has for you. So each of our toolkits is a stepping stone, with proactive responsibility, making good decisions, and then CD, having a can-do attitude. You don't give up, you persevere. Third, then developing your talents. All right, TD, everyone will score a touchdown, right, RV? But you have to work at it to make that happen in your life. So you discover your talents discovered. Then you set vision based on what your talents are. Don't try to be someone else, be who you were made to be. And then you've got to do your 3T, managing your time, temptation, and treasure. That gives you the opportunity now to build healthy relationships. MR, meaningful relationships. Mr. shows respect, or Mrs., right? And then we can get to teams, love, collaboration. And when we show this progression, the kids working on these talents and skills and building their habits to it, now getting to your future is very doable, right? So kids start to believe in themselves. They believe that the future is attainable, rather than giving up and falling into the escapism and distractions of